Welcome and congratulations to solving a multi-step equation with a variable on both sides. What I want to do is I just want to kind of summarize the processes that we've learned in this course, and as well as to kind of go over some common mistakes, as well as some kind of tips and tricks that you can use as you're moving on from the courses, but to kind of remember this one. So again, this is our process when we're solving multi-step equations. The first and most important thing that I'm going to kind of say as my tips and tricks is, again, to simplify, right? And so many people, get stuck with this is, simplify both sides. And I see a lot of students using, properties of equality, automatically just getting started. Don't go through that yet until you've simplified both sides. And most commonly through this course, we used the distributive property. So what can be very helpful, and not always, but very helpful, is to apply the distributive property and then combine like terms, right? Simplify, combine like terms. So if you can go into a problem and it's already, you have simplified the left side, simplified the right side, and everything is in simplest terms, then it's much easier to kind of look at it and say, okay, now I just need to get my variable to the same side. And one thing that really helps me out, which is a good kind of tips and tricks, is get the variable to the same side and always try to get it to be positive. You don't have to. You can work with it to be negative. But if I had 3x plus 1 equals 5x minus 2, all right? Now, you need to get the variable to the same side, right? So you can either, subtract the 5x on both sides or subtract the 3x on both sides. And most of the time, students like to solve with the variable on the left side because a majority of the problems are like that. But I would recommend that forget about trying to get the variable on one side or the other. It doesn't matter. It just needs to be on one side because we need to isolate it. But I would subtract the 3x. So therefore, when I subtract the 3x on both sides, I'm left with a positive 2x. And then I just don't have to use any more. I don't have to divide out the negative 1 because we always want to solve for the positive variable. As far as some common mistakes that I see with students, you got to make sure that when you're doing, let's kind of go through this. So some common mistakes would be the property of equality. All right, and actually, let's go through that. 3x minus 1 equals 5x minus 2, or plus 2. I don't even know if that's the same answer. But a lot of times, see students that say, OK, subtract the 3x. And they'll subtract the 3x on both sides. All right, remember, whatever you do on one side of the equation, you have to be able to do on the second side of the equation. Which brings me to my next common mistakes is like terms. So I'll see students subtract the negative 3x, and then they'll maybe say, oh, well, maybe let me subtract the 3x twice. No. I only subtracted 3x once, so I can only subtract it once over here. That kind of goes back to my property of equality. But then they'll say, oh, well, why don't I subtract it from 2? Right? Well, what's 2 minus 3x? Oh, that's going to be a negative x or negative 1. No. They're not like terms. So, and that kind of just goes all the way back to multi-step equations. You got to make sure when you're combining like terms that they're like terms, all right? The x's and numbers are x's and y's and numbers. We can't combine them using addition and subtraction. So those are kind of some of my common mistakes that I would say. Working into another one is going back to simplifying, which is distributive property. Just make sure when you're applying that distributive property, you multiply that number times both of them, especially when they have a negative. This one gets a lot of students. Remember, you're just multiplying that negative 1 times both terms, so that's a negative x plus 1. Okay? But there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That's just kind of a quick little summary of what I hope that you took out of this course for solving an equation with a variable on both sides. Thanks.